Hello. Today I'm going to tell you a story that will make your blood run cold. A story that proves a mother's intuition is never wrong. For 7 years, for 7 years, I lived in a gray fog, mourning the daughter I never got to hold. The doctors told me she was born too weak and died just minutes after birth. I buried a tiny sealed casket, and along with it, I buried a piece of my soul. And then, on an ordinary sunny day, I went to the park and I saw her, my daughter, alive. And standing right next to her was the very man who, 7 years ago, told me with tears in his eyes that he had done everything he could to save her. Before I tell you what happened next and how I unraveled a monstrous conspiracy that destroyed my life, I want to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Your subscriptions and likes help us share stories like this that need to be heard. It all began 7 years ago. My husband David and I were expecting our first child. It was a long-awaited pregnancy, one we had prayed for and struggled for. Every kick from my daughter inside me felt like a celebration. We had already chosen a name for her, Lily. Our entire apartment was filled with baby things, a tiny crib, mountains of pink onesies, cute little toys. We were completely and utterly happy. My pregnancy was managed by Dr. Harrison, the head of the department at the best private clinic in the city. He was incredibly charming, always smiling, reassuring me that the pregnancy was progressing perfectly. He was the kind of doctor you trust without question. He called David and me his favorite couple and promised the delivery would go smoothly. The day of the delivery arrived. It started well, but then I saw a flicker of panic in the doctor's eyes. Dr. Harrison, always so calm, suddenly became sharp. He shouted something at the nurses, and I was rushed into an operating room for an emergency C-section. The last thing I remember is the bright glare of a lamp and David's terrified face behind the glass. I woke up in a recovery room. David was sitting beside me, his face ashen. Then Dr. Harrison walked in. He sat on the edge of the bed, took off his glasses, and staring at the floor, spoke the words that became my life sentence. "I'm so sorry. We did everything we could. There was a severe cord complication. We couldn't save her. She only lived for a few minutes." My world didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at a fixed point on the wall. A black hole had opened up inside me, swallowing all sounds, all colors, all feelings. The funeral was a blur. They gave us a small, white, sealed casket. Dr. Harrison said that due to the complications and procedures, it was better not to open it. I remember standing by that tiny grave, feeling nothing but an all-consuming emptiness. David and I dismantled the nursery that same evening. Every touch of a pink blanket was like a knife to the heart. David supported me as best he could, but our shared grief didn't bring us closer. Instead, it built an invisible wall between us. He buried himself in his work. I buried myself in my depression. We stopped talking about Lily, as if she had never existed. Over the years, the sharp pain dulled, but the emptiness remained. We never tried for another child. I couldn't. I felt like I would be betraying the memory of my first and only daughter. Years passed, 7 of them. I learned to live with the void. I started painting. It became my therapy. I painted portraits of children. It was probably my subconscious attempt to reclaim what was taken from me. I became a moderately well-known artist in our city, my paintings sought after for children's bedrooms. Every happy child's face I painted was both a blessing and a curse. On the day that changed everything, I went to the Central Park to do some sketching. I sat on a bench, watching the children play in the fountain. And that's when I saw her. A girl, about 7 years old, with two playful pigtails, laughing as she tried to catch the water spray. She was like a little ray of sunshine, but that wasn't what caught my eye. On her left arm, just above the wrist, was a birthmark, a small, crescent-shaped birthmark, exactly like the one I had seen dozens of times on the ultrasound scans. My doctor had even joked back then, "Looks like your daughter will have her own little moon on her arm." The blood drained from my face. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would leap out of my chest and roll down the park path. I couldn't breathe. It couldn't be. It was just a coincidence. Millions of people, millions of birthmarks. But then the little girl turned and called out, "Daddy, look, I'm almost a mermaid." And a man walked over to her, tall, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive suit. Dr. Harrison. He smiled at her with that same charming smile he had used to reassure me 7 years ago. He ruffled her hair and said, "Of course, my little mermaid. But let's not splash too much, or Mommy will be upset." The world spun around me. I gripped the bench to keep from falling. "Daddy? Mommy? My little mermaid?" A single word screamed inside my head. "No, no, no." I shot up from the bench and, without looking where I was going, practically ran from the park. I didn't want him to see me. Not yet. When I got home, I collapsed on the floor in the hallway and finally broke down. For the first time in 7 years, I wasn't crying silent, suffocating tears into a pillow. I was screaming. These were tears not just of grief, but of a monstrous, impossible, insane hope. What if I wasn't crazy? What if my mother's heart, which had ached and refused to believe in her death all these years, had been right all along? That evening, I told David everything. He listened, his face growing darker with every word. I expected shock, anger, determination. What I got was pity. "Claire," he said gently, putting his arm around me. "Honey, I understand. This is trauma. You saw a child who looked similar, a doctor who looked familiar. Your mind is just playing a cruel trick on you. Please, let's not torture ourselves. Lily is gone. We were at her funeral." "But the casket was sealed," I screamed. "David, you don't get it. The birthmark, it was exactly the same." "Claire, it's just a birthmark. Let me make an appointment for you with a good therapist. We'll get through this together," he said, talking to me as if I were mentally ill. That night, I realized I was alone in this fight. David had given up 7 years ago. But me? I had just stepped onto the warpath. For the next few weeks, I lived a double life. To David, I was the dutiful wife who had agreed to therapy. In reality, I was conducting my own investigation. Every day, I went to that park. I became a shadow. I learned the girl's name was Annie Harrison. She had a mother, an elegant but perpetually sad-looking woman named Eleanor. They looked like the picture-perfect family. But I saw the cracks. I saw the way Eleanor looked at the girl, with adoration, but also with a kind of hidden fear. My first move was to try and get my medical records from the clinic. I went there under the pretext of needing them for a consultation in another city. The administrator typed on her computer for a long time, then gave me an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry, but a portion of our archives from that year were lost due to a pipe bursting in the storage room. Your file isn't among the ones that survived." A pipe bursting. How convenient. I realized I couldn't do this alone. I had money from my art sales, so I hired a private investigator. His name was Jack, a former detective with tired but incredibly sharp eyes. I told him everything, leaving out no detail. He didn't look at me like I was crazy. He just listened and nodded. Jack started digging. A week later, he brought me the first piece of information. Dr. Harrison and his wife, Eleanor, had been unable to have children for 15 years. They had been through hell, IVF, surrogacy. Nothing worked. Eleanor had suffered several miscarriages and fallen into a deep depression. And then, suddenly, 7 years ago, a daughter appeared. The official story they told friends and colleagues was that they had adopted the daughter of distant relatives who had died in a car crash. Jack checked every database. There was no car crash involving any distant relatives of the Harrisons that year. A lie, the first thread. But this was all circumstantial. I needed someone from the inside, someone who had worked at that clinic 7 years ago. Jack spent weeks sifting through lists of former employees, and he found her, a nurse named Brenda, whom Dr. Harrison had fired for negligence just 1 month after I gave birth. Finding her wasn't easy. She had changed her last name and was working as a caregiver in a hospice across the country. Jack went to see her. At first, she flatly refused to talk, but when Jack showed her my photo and a picture of little Annie from the park, she broke. Jack recorded her confession on his phone. As I listened to that recording, the ground fell away beneath me. Brenda told him everything. Dr. Harrison's wife, Eleanor, had been on the verge of suicide. She was obsessed with having a child. So Harrison devised his monstrous plan. A few weeks before my due date, he admitted his wife to the clinic, putting her in a private VIP room to fake complications in late-term pregnancy. No one on the staff dared to question the head of the department. When I gave birth to a healthy baby girl and was taken to recovery under anesthesia, he made the switch. He forged a death certificate listing a fabricated cause. He then took my daughter, my living, breathing Lily, and brought her to his wife's room. He told the other nurses that she was a baby, abandoned by a single mother, and that he would be temporarily fostering her. And the casket? What had I buried? Brenda explained that too. The day before my delivery, a real tragedy had occurred at the clinic. A young, impoverished girl had given birth to a stillborn baby. Harrison paid her a huge sum of money to keep quiet and used that poor infant's body to stage my daughter's death. Brenda knew everything. She was a young nurse and was afraid of losing her job. But when she saw my grief, her conscience got the better of her. She tried to ask Harrison a few questions, hinting that she knew the truth. The very next day, she was fired and blacklisted, threatened that if she ever said a word, she'd be charged as an accomplice and would rot in prison. She was terrified, so she stayed silent. For 7 years. When the recording ended, I sat in silence. The hatred I felt was so intense, it could have burned the city to the ground. Now I had it all. I had the truth. I could have just gone to the police. But I wanted more. I wanted them to look me in the eye. I wanted David, my husband, who hadn't believed me, to see the truth with his own eyes. With Jack's help and a lawyer he recommended, we devised a plan. I organized a solo exhibition of my paintings at the most prestigious gallery in the city. The main event of the evening was advertised as a charity auction to benefit the pediatric wing of Dr. Harrison's clinic. Of course, he and his wife were the guests of honor. The evening was in full swing. The hall was packed. People were sipping champagne and admiring my work. I saw the Harrisons. Eleanor was holding Annie, Lily, by the hand. My heart was tearing itself apart. My daughter, she was standing just a few feet away from me and had no idea who I was. I took the microphone, I thanked the guests, and then I said, "Tonight, I want to present my latest and most important work, a painting into which I have poured all of my soul and all of my pain from the last 7 years." On my signal, the cloth was pulled away from a large canvas in the center of the hall. The painting was of Annie, my Lily. I had painted her from memory, from those stolen moments in the park. I painted her laughing, with her pigtails flying, and on her left arm, as a shining focal point, I painted the crescent-shaped birthmark. A hush fell over the room. I saw Eleanor Harrison's face go deathly white. Dr. Harrison tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the panic flooding his eyes. And then I started talking. I told them everything. About the birth, the sealed casket, the day in the park, and then I played the recording of Brenda's confession. Her voice, amplified by the speakers, filled the entire gallery. David was standing beside me. I watched him transform from a skeptic into a man experiencing the absolute horror of realization. He looked from me to Harrison, and tears streamed down his face. When the recording finished, Eleanor Harrison collapsed to her knees, screaming, "Forgive me. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to be a mother so badly." Harrison grabbed her arm, trying to pull her up, and hissed, "Shut up, you fool." But it was too late. At that moment, the gallery doors opened, and the police walked in, flanked by Jack and my lawyer. It was over. The trial was a media sensation. The story shook the entire city. Harrison received the maximum sentence. Eleanor, given her state and her cooperation with the investigation, received a suspended sentence and court-ordered psychiatric treatment. But the hardest part was still ahead. My daughter. To her, I was a stranger, and the people she had loved and called mom and dad were criminals. We started working with the best child psychologists. It was a long, painful process. For the first few weeks, she wouldn't even look at me. David was crushed by guilt. He begged me to forgive him for not believing me. I did. Our shared grief had once torn us apart, but our shared fight for our daughter brought us back together. Gradually, step by step, we started building a bridge to our Lily's heart. We told her how we had waited for her, showed her the baby clothes I had kept hidden in a box all these years. We never badmouthed the Harrisons. The psychologists taught us to say that they loved her very much, but had done a very wrong thing. The first breakthrough came after 3 months. We were sitting in the park, on that same bench. Lily was quiet for a long time. Then she gently took my hand and asked, "Will you call me your little mermaid, too?" I hugged her and cried, and in that moment, I knew it had all been worth it. 2 more years have passed since then. We are a family. The wounds still ache, and they probably never will heal completely. But now my life has meaning again. It has my daughter's laughter, her warm breath on my cheek when I read her a bedtime story. I got my life back. I got my daughter back. And I know for certain that you can never fool a mother's heart. It always, always knows the truth. Claire's story is one of monstrous betrayal, but also of the incredible power of a mother's love. If it touched you as much as it did us, Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other incredible stories that need to be told. And be sure to share in the comments what you felt when you heard the nurse's confession. Your opinion means the world to us. Thank you for watching.